So thank you again, and thank you, Brooks, for sharing. We're going to go into our next speaker, Will Futrell, with the North Carolina Department of Revenue, the COVID-19 Business Recovery Grant. Will, welcome to Latin 19.
Thank you so much for having me and giving us this opportunity to talk about this program. My name is Will Futrell. I'm the Strategic Planning and Public Engagement Officer at the North Carolina Department of Revenue. And I'm joined today by McKinley Wooten, who is our Assistant Secretary for Tax Research and Equity. Just wanted to introduce him because he may be helping me with answering some questions about the program. But I just wanted to take the time today to go over this program, talk about what the Business Recovery Grant Program actually is, go over its eligibility requirements, and walk you through the application process. If after watching this, you have any questions about the program, please call our helpline, which you can see on our slide. We have bilingual assistance if necessary, so please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about this program. So the Business Recovery Grant Program was enacted in the budget passed by the General Assembly and signed by Governor Cooper in November last year. It provides one-time grant payments to aid North Carolina businesses that suffered substantial economic damage from the COVID-19 pandemic. The program created two types of grants, the hospitality grant and the reimbursement grant, to help cover a percentage of an eligible business's economic loss due to the pandemic, with a maximum grant amount of grant payment capped at $500,000. The department opened the application period for this program on December 16th, 2021. And it's important that you note that the deadline to apply for this grant program is this coming Monday, January 31st. And please note that the department must have received any applications on or before that January 31st deadline. So next, let's talk about the eligibility requirements for each of the grants, starting with the hospitality grant. The program authorized nearly $300 million for hospitality grants awards to businesses that meet all of the following requirements. The business must be classified in the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS code 71 or 72. And what these codes cover are basically businesses that are primarily engaged in the accommodations, food services, arts, entertainment, and recreation industries. The second requirement is that the business must have suffered an economic loss of at least 20% during the defined COVID period, which I'll talk more on in a minute. And finally, the business must be subject to North Carolina income tax. The eligibility requirements for the reimbursement grant are slightly different, but they're extremely important, so I'll go over those now. The program allotted $200 million for reimbursement grants to provide financial aid to businesses suffering because of the pandemic, but weren't able to take advantage of some of the previously enacted federal relief programs. To qualify for a reimbursement grant, a business must meet all of the following conditions. The business cannot be classified in NAICS code 71 or 72. So this includes the reimbursement grant is for essentially any other type of business outside the hospitality industry. The next two requirements are same as those for the hospitality grant. The business must have suffered an economic loss of at least 20%, and the business must be subject to North Carolina income tax. And finally, the business cannot have previously received money, a loan, an advance, a grant, or any other consideration from the federal programs listed on the screen. So now I want to take some time to focus on the requirement that a business suffer a 20% economic loss. So because this program is intended to aid businesses that have suffered economically due to the pandemic, the statute defines how we are to calculate a business's economic loss. And a business's economic loss will be based on the amount its gross receipts in North Carolina were reduced between what is called the pre-COVID period, which is March 1st, 2019 through February 29th, 2020, and the COVID period, which is March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2021. And I want to take a minute here to go ahead and give some clarity on this, because we've gotten a lot of questions about on this topic since we launched the program. It's what if a business opened during the pre-COVID period? Are they still eligible? So technically, yes, the business is still eligible if they opened in the middle of the pre-COVID period. However, depending upon when the business opened during the pre-COVID period, it's going to affect your ability to have the gross receipts necessary to prove the 20% economic loss. However, if a business opened after the pre-COVID period, so after February 29th, 2020, unfortunately, they will not be eligible to apply for this because they will not be able to prove the gross receipts necessary to calculate economic loss. So like I said, in order to calculate your economic loss, you'll need to determine your gross receipts. For most applicants, gross receipts are those reported on line 1 of Form E-500, which is the North Carolina Sales and Use Tax Return. However, if the applicant did not report the gross receipts on line 1 of that form, the gross receipts are going to be the sum of those reported on lines 4 through 8 of that same Form E-500. And you can see on the screen here the tax types covered by lines 4 through 8. And it's important to know, with people who file monthly and quarterly, their gross receipts aren't going to perfectly match up with the defined COVID periods that were established in the law. So what we've done is in the instructions for the grant application, we have got detailed information on how those monthly and quarterly filers are going to be calculating the gross receipts. Now, if you're a partnership and you filed a federal Form 1065, your U.S. partnership return of income, you may also include your gross receipts reported on line 1A of that form, as long as they meet both of the following conditions. Those gross receipts were not reported on any Form E-500, and the gross receipts are for transactions apportioned to North Carolina. So once you figure out that you're eligible, how much could you possibly receive if you qualify? Your awarded amount is going to depend on which grant bucket you fall into. Now, remember that all grant payments are capped at $500,000. So if you're eligible for the hospitality grant and you have not previously received an award from any of those federal programs I've listed on the slide, then you may receive a grant of up to 20% of your economic loss. However, if you are eligible for the hospitality grant but did previously receive an award amount from those programs, then you still may receive a grant payment of up to 10% of your economic loss. And if you're eligible for a reimbursement grant, you may receive a grant of up to 20% of your economic loss. But remember that to be eligible for the reimbursement grant, you cannot have previously received an award from any of those listed federal programs. So what happens if the total amount of grant awards exceeds the funds authorized for the program? So what will happen is the grants will be reduced in the order established by law. So in essence, we cannot calculate a business's actual grant amount until we have received all eligible applications. And after we've received all eligible applications, we will make all payments by check and mail them to the address provided by the business on the application. And at the end of the application period, so starting a week from yesterday, you'll be able to find updated payment distribution information under the payments tab on our business recovery grant webpage. Now, at this point in the application period, I highly discourage you from mailing a paper application. But if you must mail a paper application, I just want to make sure that you send it to the correct address for this program, and that's listed on the screen here. Because like I said at the very beginning, if we have not received a paper application at that address on or before January 31st, you won't be eligible for the program. And so while you can also fax the application or deliver it to one of our service centers, the best way to avoid any issues and any unnecessary stress is to submit an electronic application, which we have available in English and Spanish. And we highly encourage you to submit an electronic application because you're going to get the benefit of an emailed confirmation that the Department of Revenue has received your application. You're going to have your economic loss computed for you, and you'll have checkpoints in the application to ensure you've completed all the required fields of the application before you submit it. So one of the key things here is you do not have to worry about your application being somewhere in limbo. Once you submit it and get that confirmation that we've received it, you're good to go. So what are you going to need to fill out the application? You're going to need your business's demographic information, which might include your business's federal ID number, or if you're sole proprietorship, social security number. It might include your North Carolina sales and use tax account IDs. You'll need your NAICS number and your gross receipts for the pre-COVID and COVID periods. So let's take a look at what the electronic application actually looks like. So here on the screen, you can see circled is a link to the instructions that I referenced earlier for monthly and quarterly filers. I highly encourage you to click that and read the instructions before beginning the application because there's a lot of good information on there. But in part one of the application, you'll enter your business's information, starting with your business's structural type, whether you're a sole proprietorship, you're an LLC, or a partnership. And once you've selected that from the drop-down menu, the required fields will display with the information needed for your designated structure. And part two covers eligibility requirements I mentioned at the beginning. And here you'll answer yes or no to 3 questions. And while not every business will meet the eligibility requirements of obtaining a sales and use tax account ID, so if your business is utilizing your gross receipts from your previously filed sales and use tax return, you're going to be entering in information on fields 4 and 7. However, if your business is utilizing information from your partnership return, you'll be entering in information on fields 5 and 8. And once you've entered in those figures, fields 6, 9, 10, and 11 are going to be automatically computed for you. And here where you see this arrow is an example of one of those checkpoints we put in the application so that you can know whether you're entering in accurate information and make sure that you've entered in all the necessary information needed for the application. Part 4 is where you'll attach any necessary documents like your Form 1065, or if you have multiple sales and use tax account IDs, you'll need to include those. Finally, in part 5, you'll sign, date the application. And after you've looked at it one last time, you'll select finish, and which will submit the application to the department. And once you do that, you'll have the option to print your completed application. You'll get an email confirmation that we've received your application, and also have the opportunity to view your completed application through that email. So what do you do if after submitting your application, you've realized you made a mistake or have any other issues with what you originally applied for? You'll need to submit an amended application, which the department must have received on or before that January 31st deadline. And amended applications should be submitted when there are any issues with what you originally applied for. And you'll file an amended application as though an original one wasn't filed. You'll simply open up the electronic application and select amended application in the top right-hand corner. And so just before I have some resources I do want to share with y'all, but before we get into our Q&A, I do want to just share with you some common questions we've got since we started administering this program. First one is, I've not filed an E-500 sales and use tax return during the COVID period. What should I do? You should file and pay the E-500 sales and use tax return for the missing periods. You must include the gross receipts that will be reported on line 1 of that Form E-500 when calculating your gross receipts for the COVID period. And second question is, if a business is not a partnership for federal income tax purposes and does not have a NC sales and use tax ID, is the business eligible? Unfortunately, no. Due to the way the law was written, if a business is not a partnership for federal income tax purposes, and the business does not have an NC sales and use tax account ID, the business will not be eligible. And finally, when's the last day you can submit your application? It's going to be on or before January 31st. So if you're submitting electronic application, you can wait until, well, I don't encourage you to wait until January 31st. You can submit an electronic application on or before that date. But any application submitted by fax, mail, or delivered to one of our service centers across the state must be received by the department on or before January 31st. And finally, if you have any questions, like I said, please do not hesitate to reach out to our helpline. We have dedicated staff and who are our subject matter experts on business recovery grants. We'll be happy to help you with any questions you might have. The link to our webpage for business recovery grants is, you'll see it on the screen. And you can, if you go there, you can find more information on eligibility requirements. You can access the Spanish and English applications, and you can check out our FAQs. And should you need the webpage translated, we do have Google Translate available on that website and on our website, and you should be able to select the language you'd like to read that webpage in I believe it's in the top right-hand corner of our webpage. And finally, if you want to hear more from me, feel free to Google NCDOR YouTube to go to our YouTube channel. We have recorded a seminar that covers everything I've just seemingly breezed through. If you would like to check that out. And finally, if anybody has any questions for us, I have not been monitoring the chat, but be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Futrell. I had a question, and it looks like it is by arrival date, which means it has to be mailed today or tomorrow. I don't know.
Yes. Unfortunately, that was due to how the legislation was written. It is determined on when we've received the application. So again, I highly encourage electronic submission of your application.
And I would add, Viviana, that we do have the application on the website is in Spanish. There is a Spanish application as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, McKinley. Mr. Wooten, any other questions from others? Maybe if you want to stop sharing the screen so I can see. I don't see any raised hands of the. There we go. I don't know if there are any questions regarding this. I really appreciate you bringing the information. We'll post this. I just need to make sure to ask for permission from Yvette and others that spoke about personal matters. If it is okay to post, otherwise we'll try to post them right away in our website so people have access to the information, because I think it was.
Absolutely. And I can email out a handout version of this PowerPoint too, if that would be helpful.
That would be great. Yeah. Any questions or comments, members of the Gabriela Maradiaga, Alejandro, Leonor, any comments? I do want to comment that Latin 19 has been supporting and working together with La Semilla doing rapid free tests in the community. We've done over 1,400, over 1,000 of them have been between December and now. And we just got, thanks to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, we just got 1,800 more tests to do COVID testing out in the community. And I did the training today with the new test kits for the eye health test. So La Semilla is out doing tests. Thank you so much for our partnership with them. Don't know if, I don't see questions for Will or McKinley. But thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the information. I will share it in our newsletter, and we'll do it today. We'll send some of the information right away, because our newsletter comes on Tuesdays, which will be late for this grant.